Olympic weightlifting coach course, clean module. So the objectives of this module are to understand the definition of the clean for weightlifting purposes, to discuss protocols for teaching the clean, and to understand some of the common errors and related correctional drills. So the clean is defined by the IWF to be the barbells placed horizontally in front of the lifter's legs. It is gripped, palms downwards, and pulled in a single movement from the platform to the shoulders while either splitting or bending the legs. During this continuous movement, the barbell may slide along the thighs and the lap. The barbell must not touch the chest before the final position. It then rests on the clavicles or on the chest above the nipples or on the arms fully bent. The feet return to the same line, legs straight before performing the jerk. The lifter may make this recovery in his or her own time and finish with the feet on the same line, parallel to the plane of the trunk and the barbell. So like the snatch, the muscles used in the clean are pretty much virtually every muscle in the body, with less work being performed by the shoulders and triceps due to the fact that the bar only travels to the chest or shoulders and not above the head. Due to the advantage of being able to stop at the chest, what it means is larger loads can be used in the clean in comparison with the snatch, and therefore it can be considered a relatively greater strength and less speed-based or orientated exercise. Generally, they're both power exercises, and it's important to realize they are both still power-based, but because of the heavier loads, it means the bar will move slightly slower. So when we tend to describe the two exercises, the clean tends to be more at the kind of strength end of the power continuum. The snatch tends to be more at the speed end of the power continuum. Clean styles. Well, there are two main ways to clean, just as what we see with the snatch. The first being with a parallel stance, which is what we see with the squat clean or the power clean. So when you're catching the weight, you do that simply by bending the legs and catching it in a parallel stance. Or you can utilize a split stance position, which is what we see with the split clean. As you are lifting the bar upwards, you would split 1 foot forward, 1 foot backwards. That is quite an unusual variation. You don't tend to see that at all in weightlifting competitions. It can be used if you want to emphasize more of a kind of single leg catch position, but it is more unusual. Even more unusual than the split snatch, which was historically a little bit more favored in weightlifting competitions. There are also many style variations among elite lifters of how wide to have the feet, how externally rotated the legs are, etc., and even the grip. But usually the feet are around about hip, shoulder distance apart, the wider position of the catch phase being considered different to the lifting stance, which is what we use during the first pull, transition, and second pull phases. So just a quick recap of the clean for the parallel stance. So the bar is lifted from the ground. And all the phases, as we've kind of gone through previously, we see the first pull where the legs extend at the knees, shoulders kept over the bar. We then transition by pushing the hips forward, pulling the shoulders back. The bar will brush against the thighs. You then initiate into the second pull where we do a big jump and shrug to get the bar moving upwards. Trajectory or the peak height of the bar is going to be a lot less for the clean than it is for the snatch. We then do the pull under, where we bring the elbows under and in front, catch in a front squat position, and then the recovery, obviously pushing up to a standing position. From there then we can adjust the grip if we want to in preparation for the jerk. So a lot of lifters will tend to just move their hands slightly wider to make the jerk slightly easier, and then that's the completion. So key coaching for the different phases for the clean. For the setup, and you will notice similarities obviously between the clean and the snatch. Setup, the bar should be roughly over the end of the shoelaces, arms should be extended, elbows rotated out, hips should be higher than the knees, the chest is up, core is braced, shoulders over or in front of the bar, feet should be flat with the weight on the midfoot. Take the slack off the bar, and again we should have a clean distance hook grip. For the first pull, the bar will move towards the shins, the arms should remain extended, the knees should extend backwards, the hip to shoulder or torso angle should remain the same as you push the floor away from you. Shoulders should be over or in front of the bar, feet should be flat Weight is now shifted backwards onto the heels, and we do it at a slow to moderate speed, i.e. we don't try and rip the bar from the floor. For the transition, the bar will pass the knees, the arms again will still remain extended, the hips will move forward, which is what pushes the knees forward, the shoulders will pull back, as we said the knees will re-bend, and the bar will continue to move upwards. For the second pull then, the hips and knees extend and you come up onto your toes as if performing a jump, and you're going to shrug violently upwards, extending the body upwards or backwards. So you may go into a hyperextended position. We saw a bit of a hyperextension with the previous video. For the pull under, as the bar is moving upwards then, you're going to allow the arms to bend with the elbows out. You're going to pull the body straight downwards. You're going to shift the feet apart for the catch if you wish. And you're going to roll the elbows forwards and upwards underneath the bar. For the catch, we catch the bar on the shoulders, in the rack position, with the elbows bent and up, and you start pushing upwards through the torso and push forcibly into the floor with the legs in order to decelerate the bar. Chest should be up, looking forwards. For the recovery then, you're then going to push upwards to a standing position, focusing on keeping the hips forward during the ascent. So if we adopt the top-down approach for the clean, then the first part of the lift that needs to be learnt is the recovery. So the recovery is the point of the lift where the bar has been caught, preferably on the anterior portion of the shoulders, and as we already know, this is referred to as the barbell rack position. So the best way to learn this position and become acclimatized to it and strong in this position is to utilize the front squat exercise. And just as we saw with the overhead squat and the snatch, key limiting factor in the clean will be the maximal load with which you can front squat. So we've shown it to you previously, we won't labour the point too much, but obviously what we're looking at with the front squat, the hands should be outside the shoulders, elbows should be up, the kind of upper arm almost horizontal, torso should be as vertical as possible, and we lower the hips down towards the heels, trying to get into a maximal squat position. Feet should be flat, knees are going to track in line with the shoelaces. And we will require greater dorsiflexion, so the knees are going to usually move further forward with the front squat than what we would see with the back squat. Here we see it from the side. So if you are looking from the side, again, like with all the kind of exercises, you want to try and keep the weight over the base of support, over the feet. But for the user, keeping the torso as vertical as possible, lowering the hips straight downwards, and keeping the elbows up are all the kind of key coaching points that we want to adopt. So recovery errors would include allowing the elbows to drop or leaning forwards. So as the bar moves forwards, because you're allowing the elbows to drop or the torso is coming away from vertical, this shifts the centre of mass forwards. It's going to stress the low back a lot more, so people complain of really feeling it in the low back when they do front squats and lean forward. And it's also going to potentially cause the bar to be dropped in front, or it's going to require the lifter to step forward in order to kind of compensate. The other error we tend to see, knees caving inwards, so you're more likely to see in the clean than in the snatch, although you can see it in both. And it's a twitch at the start of the ascent is quite common, and this is kind of due to trying to recruit the kind of muscles. And a slight twitch isn't really too much of a problem, but a significant caving in of the knees is, or pronation is what we like to call it technically, is something we look to avoid because of the potential stress on the knee joint. Effectively, you're putting it in a rotated and flexed position with heavy load, and that will cause a lot of stress on the kind of medial structures of the knee. So imagine you kind of catch the bar too far forward, or you kind of lean too far forward, then you're going to see you're going to have to step forward, or you're going to have to allow that bar to drop. So we'll show this from a kind of power clean from high hang, but we lean too far forward. As you see, the weight shifts onto the toes or even in front of the toes, and you can't, or it's almost impossible to pull that back with any load. So you have to step forward, or you just have to allow the bar to actually drop to the ground. The other error that we mentioned then is knees caving inwards. So if you focus on this athlete's knee, particularly from the bottom of the catch position, you see how they really collapse inwards. and that will cause us a lot of stress on the knee joint. So I say a little twitch, not the end of the world as you start the ascents, but generally we want to try and keep large pronation movements and try to avoid those. And getting strong in the front squat should help us to avoid that. Now the catch phase of the clean is far easier to teach than that of the snatch, for most people anyway, but unlike the teaching progression in the snatch model, there's no real comparable clean version of the snatch balance. There are a few drills that we can do, but we don't cover this on this course. Instead, more emphasis is placed in learning to properly front squat with good form. So flexibility, not only around the shoulder, but also the wrists, is going to be needed for correct technique. So when we're teaching the catch and recovery, the front squat in particular is going to be our key teaching drill. Now we can start to get used to dropping into it quickly, so you could do a drop front squat where we really kind of focus on doing a fast eccentric phase. This can be combined also with kind of a shifting of the stance, so you start up on your toes and then you shift your feet out to the sides, kind of like we did with the snatch balance. The only downside with doing that with the front squat is you do tend to find that the bar bangs a little bit because you kind of leave it behind as you drop, and then you always get a bit of a rebound. So there are ways that we can kind of tweak that, but even just kind of doing a front squat with a fast eccentric phase should help us to start to learn how to do a faster catch. Now other errors that we would see, particularly in the catch, catching the bar in the hands. So many beginners will catch the bar in their hands with the forearms vertical rather than catching the bar on the shoulders, which is the correct rack position. And this puts all of the load and the stress onto the arms and shoulders, and it's going to greatly decrease the potential load that you could actually lift. So for many this is instinctive because they don't have the adequate wrist and shoulder mobility to get into the correct rack position. However, this should be screened and therefore corrected within preparation phases of training when you're looking at the front squat. So you shouldn't really get to the position when you're trying to teach them how to do the clean that they haven't mastered the kind of Olympic or barbell rack position front squat. Other catch errors would include being relaxed upon the landing, so you must be rigid through the upper body and core to effectively transmit the force from the lower body in order to decelerate the bar. Again, actively focus on pushing up through the bar on the descent. Strongly pushing through the floor on the landing should help you to be a little bit stronger and less passive upon the catch. The other error, which again we saw with the snatch, jumping forward under the bar, and same issues, this is going to be due to the bar trajectory being off. Bars too far forward on the catch, kind of what we saw with one of the previous videos as well, and this causes the lifter to step or jump forward in order to realign the bar over the base of support over the feet. Keeping the bar closer to the body, in particular on the first pull, should help us to kind of keep a narrower bar trajectory, and also extending the body back on the second pull should help us to correct this. So you shouldn't see someone have to do like this little bunny hop forward in order to get into the clean catch position. So once the initial catch and recovery phases have been learned through the front squat, then it's going to be time to learn how to transition from below the waist up to chest height. Although the next phase down is the pull under, it's not really possible to learn this phase without learning first how to do the complete second pull. So when learning weightlifting, it's prudent to start by learning the high hang position, again so as not to overcomplicate the lift. So the second pull, in order to get to the point where enough power is produced to perform the pull under phase, it is easier to break the second pull down into learning how to reinforce the triple joint extension with a powerful shrug from the high hang position. So this involves lowering the bar partway down the thighs and then forcefully extending the hips and knees whilst coming up onto the balls of the feet and powerfully shrugging the bar upwards with the trapezius. The arms should remain locked out during this exercise so that the emphasis can be placed in the lower body and how that synchronizes with the scapular elevation. So second pull drills, like we said, we start off with a clean power shrug from the high hang position. So again, keep it nice and simple. So effectively you're doing a jump and shrug, keeping the arms straight at the elbow and just focusing on that triple extension and scapular elevation. That can then be progressed into clean high pulls where we allow the arms to bend, either holding the top position or dropping downwards. So starting to get into the link it in with the pull under. And then we can also perform a muscle clean, which we'll show you in a second as well. So a power shrug from a high hang position. So start in a standing position, clean hook grip. We're going to do a little dip down to get into our power position. So the bar is going to brush against the thighs. And then it's a jump and shrug upwards. As we see, keeping the arms straight, we can retain the hook grip throughout, and we can do kind of multiple reps. Then how you integrate second pull with a pull under. So learning to execute a good triple joint extension with a powerful shoulder shrug. Once you've done that, the next stage is to learn how to produce enough vertical displacement, get the bar as high as you can, so that the bar is going to travel to the optimal height. And this is done by allowing the arms to bend and the bar to come up to the high pull position, which for the clean is going to be around about sternum to chest height, although it can be lower. As the pull under phase is needed to be integrated into the lift, an adapted high pull is used, where the lifter is going to dip the hips and knees down in readiness to fully pull the body under the bar, as we would see with the catch position. So here we see this being performed by a Chinese lifter. It's actually taken from a high blocks rather than from a high hang, but we're doing clean pulls. So it's a jump and shrug, and then as the bar moves upwards, the arm's going to bend, but you also see the body dipping downwards, and that's coordinated in order to get this integration between both the second pull and the pull under. We're not fully pulling the body under, but we're just learning how to integrate the two. Now if you just do the clean pull or high pulls, and you tend to hold that top position. As we've mentioned previously, that can have detrimental carryover in the fact that it doesn't teach you to quickly jump and shrug and then change direction and start to move the body downwards. So you're kind of learning something that you're not going to be doing when you do the full clean movement. Now second pull errors, not extending the hips or knees fully. So it's going to be critical to achieve full extension of both the knees and hips to generate maximal force during the second pull, and restrictions in the hip flexors may inhibit that hip extension. Usually mobilization work should help to sort that out. So it's usually a technical fault rather than being a restriction in mobility. Other errors would include insufficient or poor timing of the shrug. So again, the shrug should occur just before the completion of the knee and hip extension, so as to add force to the upwards moving bar. It should be pure shoulder elevation, no rotation, and it should be explosive. Now, in addition to the kind of the high pull or adapted high pull where we drop the body down, you can perform a second pull muscle clean. And this again, it's not really teaching us how to do the pull under, it's very much just focused on the second pull. So in the initial learning stages, it can be useful to not have to worry about the catch and recovery element of the lift. And therefore the exercise known as the muscle clean is used to integrate the second pull with the bar traveling to the shoulders. So effectively you're kind of catching it in a fully upright position. There's no drop downwards, therefore there's no pull under, and you kind of don't need to worry about the actual dropping down into the catch phase. So a muscle clean occurs when there's no knee or hip bend underneath the bar, and in essence the bar is caught in the rack position, fully stood up with the knees and hips already locked out. The pull under phase into a front squat position doesn't happen. So if one were describing this, this is almost like a kettlebell version of doing a clean. So when you do a kettlebell clean, you don't drop back down to catch the bell, you kind of already catch it in an upright position. And that's kind of what we're doing with the barbell. So here we see the kind of muscle clean. It's used with lighter loads, so effectively you lift the bar higher and you don't need to drop back underneath it. So here we're kind of taking it from the floor. You can just take it from a kind of high hang position, obviously, and in this phase of learning, that's what we would be doing. But yeah, you're not actually really dipping down to catch it. You're lifting the bar much higher, and therefore you don't need to drop down into a front squat to get into that catch position. And again, following the same kind of process that we saw with the muscle snatch into overhead squat, we can do a muscle clean into a front squat. So the next learning, teaching tool could be used, again, it's not essential, but if we're just focusing on a powerful second pull from the high hang, then we can go into a muscle clean followed by a partial or even full front squat. So what this does is it starts to condition the body to become confident in accepting the bar onto the shoulders and then squatting down, in this case a front squat. So as initially many novice lifters are scared of hitting their chin, and again, so like the snatch, neural pathways and feedback systems can be reinforced that eventually lead to the correct execution of catching the bar in the semi-squat position, which is what we see with the power clean. So effectively you're going to lift it up, you're already in an upright position, and then you're going to follow it with a kind of partial front squat. As we move through teaching, we're then going to start you to actually catch it in a slightly squatted position. So progressing on to the power clean then from the high hang. So once the preceding exercise has been learnt, it's time to attempt a full power clean from the high hang. And this will bring into or integrate the second pull, pull under, catch and recovery phases all into one single exercise. So here we see this being performed then. From the high hang, you do a little dip down into your power position. It's a jump and shrug. As the bar's moving upwards, you allow the arms to bend, you pull yourself underneath it and get into our catch position. You can do this with kind of minimal lateral foot movement if you just want to focus on what's kind of more happening at the upper body, or if you want to add the lateral foot shift, then you can do. And then what we can do from the power clean is then, as you see with the video, start to play around with how deep you're actually catching it. So we start to play around with how high you lift the bar, and then as necessity, how low down you need to do to actually. So errors that we'd see with the pull under, not actively pulling the body downwards, is going to be one. So again, the pull under, just like we saw with the snatch, must be an active process. It's not passive. If you passively allow gravity to take the body down into the front squat position, it's going to be too slow. Bar's already going to be dropping towards the floor. You need to use that shrug as effectively, like we said before, a little bit of a linkage. It's just as important in relation to lifting the bar upwards as it is to pulling the bar, pulling the body downwards. And so you can kind of start to see how that simple movement, that scapular elevation, can link these two phases together. So you want to actively focus on pulling yourself straight downwards to get into the catch position as fast as possible. The other error, not adjusting the foot position, not absolutely essential for every kind of repetition, but most individuals will shift the feet, either rotating out or widening the stance, or a combination of both, in preparation for the catch phase. If you do try to catch in the narrower lifting stance, you're inevitably going to lead to kind of some difficulties, because it does require a much greater range of movement, particularly around the kind of ankle. So if you have your feet slightly narrower for the lifting phases, you want to shift them laterally. If you already start with the feet quite far out for the lifting phase, then you might not need to. But for most people, you want to shift the feet out during this pull under phase. And again, we can have to reinforce this with a 3-rep complex. So just as with the snatch, this 3-rep complex can be used to reinforce each of those phases. So we do the power shrug, followed by the adapted high pull, and then power clean. And each phase should help us to achieve better technique on the following repetition. So we do a power shrug, where we do a triple extension elevation, keep the arms locked. Then we do the high pull, allowing the arms to bend and also starting to drop down a little bit. And then we follow it with a power clean, where we actually pull the body underneath and catch the bar in our front squat position. So having learned how to do the power clean from the high hang, the next stage, if we're doing a top-down approach, is to learn to move through the transition phase into the second pull and then completing the power shrug. So again, we use the same progressions. We go down to the knee hang position and then into the low hang position, and it's the same procedure that we kind of followed in the high hang position. We do a knee hang, power shrug, high pull, power clean from knee hang or from knee height blocks. Then we move it down past the knee for, again, low hang, power shrug, second high pull, and power clean from a low hang position. Now, drills that can help us to learn this transition, again, we have our adapted or altered Romanian deadlift. This can be progressed into an adapted Romanian deadlift, adding a shrug and calf raise. So both those are performed in quite a slow tempo, just kind of tweaking those slow velocity exercises to learn how to do the transition. And then we can start to do the adapted Romanian deadlift. So you effectively perform a Romanian deadlift on the normal descent. It's just on the way up, everything changes. So you are going to keep the knees bent, you perform the transition phase, and then you add the power shrug once you've kind of brushed the bars against the thighs. Or we can do the same thing in adapted Romanian deadlift to high pull. This would then can also perform what we refer to as clean power shrugs from a low or knee height blocks, high pull from the same, and then again progressing eventually into doing power cleans from low or knee height blocks. So the adapted Romanian deadlift performed with a clean grip. The eccentric phase is pretty much the same as a normal Romanian deadlift. It's the concentric phase where instead of just coming up to a fully upright position, we're going to move the bar past the knees, and then once the bar moves past the knees, we push the hips forward, pull the shoulders back, and then we terminate in this kind of power position. So again, you should get constant reinforcement of where that bar should be brushing, which is what we're going to see when we do the full lift from the ground. One of the drills we didn't show you with the snatch, but you can easily perform, is the adapted Romanian deadlift, and then following that with a shrug and calf raise, or just a shrug, or just a calf raise. So we do the Romanian deadlift, do that brush, and then we can come up onto the toes and shrug upwards, or you can just do the shrug. Again, it's almost like a slow tempo version of the altered or adapted Romanian deadlift to power shrug. But it's a nice little kind of teaching drill. We don't need to worry about the velocity now, so we can just do it slightly slower and then progress into the quicker altered or adapted Romanian deadlift to power shrug as a progression. So transition errors, bar being too far away from the thighs. Again, it means you're going to not get a brush against the thighs, which is that important kinesthetic feedback for a lifter, particularly novice lifters. Also means that the bar is probably moving too far horizontally, i.e. too far forward. Commonly fixed by having the lifter focus on pulling the bar towards them on the second pull. Not getting any double knee bend, so again, as we mentioned with the snatch, double knee bend is going to be critical for maximum force generation. So just because it gets you in a better position, the bar is closer to the body and therefore you can exert more force. So in the short term, a lift and also the double knee bend helps us to generate more force through the knee and hip extensors. So in the short term, a lifter may well be able to lift the weight to the chest, but in the long run, not getting the double knee bend will limit their ability to lift heavier loads moving forward. So it is better to learn the most efficient technique in the early stages, even if it does take slightly longer, because you're going to get. Moving on to the first pull then, so we can do all the things we kind of showed you with the snatch, clean grip, first pull deadlift, or the first pull deadlift with the double knee bend, effectively adding the transition onto the end of that, and then progressing eventually doing this power shrug from the floor. Now, errors you may see with the first pull, hips rising too quickly, so this will load the spine more, decrease the force that's being transferred to the bar. So you want to coach to keep the hip to shoulder angle or the torso angle the same by pushing the floor away from you. The other error or key error, not keeping the shoulders over the bar, and this is usually due to weak back muscles, so the lifter tries to pull the torso into a more vertical position to decrease the stress on the back. Again, if you use strengthening exercises like the Romanian deadlift, the first pull deadlift, good mornings, kettlebell swings, etc., then you should get a good transfer of improved strength with better technique. So once we've kind of looked at all those, then we should be able and integrate them, should be at the point to then start to practice how to do a power clean from the floor. So as we see here with this slow-mo video, all those phases, the first pull, transition, second pull, feet are shifting apart during the pull under phases, and then we're catching it in a partial front squat position. And with lighter loads, we can lift the bar higher, and therefore we don't need to squat down quite so much, and that is the whole essence of doing a power clean rather than a squat clean. If we're adopting a top-down coaching model then we'd start at the high hang, and obviously then progress into mid hang or at the knees, towards low hang, and then towards the floor. So you effectively start at the top with the second pull and then start to add phases before it by adjusting your start position closer and closer towards the ground. The exercise progression with each of those then is we do the power shrug first of all, then progress into a high pull, and then into the power clean. So full top-down coaching model. So once we'd kind of learnt the catch and recovery phases, then we'd go power shrug from high hang, adapted high pull from high hang, power clean from high hang, and then we'd follow that same three-step process, then moving on to the mid hang, going through all three exercises, then to the low hang, and then eventually performing all three from the ground. And following that model should make it nice and easy to kind of learn the preceding phases as you're starting to add the transition and first pull phases to the second pull that you've mastered. If we were following a bottom-up or ground-up coaching model, then you'd start off with the first pull deadlift, progress into the first pull deadlift with a double knee bend, then progress into the power shrug from the floor, adapted high pull from the floor, and then applying that into the power clean from the ground. And as we said, you can mix these up, so you may well start teaching the catch and recovery with the front squat or fast front squat, and within the same session also teaching the second pull with a power shrug from the high hang position, and also teaching the first pull deadlift. And so as we progress into teaching you the first pull deadlift with a double knee bend, we are kind of building from the ground upwards. We may also be hitting that same thing from top downwards, so you then progress a power shrug from the high hang, and you start to add the transition to those. So there are many different style variations ranging from grip width again to foot width, hip external rotation, and lots of other kind of variations. And some of these will be decided by an individual's biomechanics. Some will be adapted to improve their performance once they've mastered basic techniques. Again, as long as the technique guidelines are adhered to, small variations in style are really not nearly as important in the initial stages of kind of learning how to do weightlifting, and particularly the kind of clean. So you can kind of get around with, and you should generally expect to see a biomechanical and individual style variations, even though the actual lift is just as efficient as the next person. So you should complete the review questions for this module to ensure you've met the learning outcomes, and then complete the guided practice. You should practice the exercises first, so you're happy with the techniques, and then practice teaching the techniques to a couple of colleagues, so you can practice both explaining and coaching the exercises. Once you've completed the guided practice, then move on to the next module.